I wanted to talk about this book, Cry the Beloved Country, which has been my favorite novel since I read it. But it's one of those things I've noticed that when I really like a book, I am often reluctant to reread it and reluctant to read more stuff by the same author because I'm worried the author will not match the first book and I'm worried the book will not hold up. And so I was like, I keep telling people this is my favorite novel. And at the time I read it, I was trying to sort of read a lot more modern literary fiction. And one of the things I tried reading was Booker Prize winners, which mostly didn't work for me. Although I've realized a lot of Booker Prize losers do. Like most Booker Prize winners I've read I haven't liked, but a lot of the runner-ups I actually have. But anyways, so this was not, as far as I know, a Booker Prize nominee or anything like that, but it was a really popular novel at the time. And it was popular because he wrote it, at least in big part, because he wrote it just before South Africa implemented formal apartheid. And so what I've realized is I think a lot of people reading it basically read it as a condemnation of apartheid. This was written before apartheid happened, or before it was formalized anyways. And there were aspects of it already in place, and it was criticizing that, but that's not what this book is about, or it's not like, this book is about a lot of things, and when I read it the first time, I basically remembered it as this is a really powerful book about forgiveness. But when I read it later, because I just reread this book like 2-3 months ago, and I was like, oh wow, this book is dealing with a lot of these themes that I have been grappling with now. I have described in my blog, I've said like, basically I'm trying to solve what I call the central problem, which is how do you live the Serenity Prayer in a world that we've built as humans, but it wasn't built for us, we weren't really built to live in it. And that is sort of a big part of this novel, is how do you like find community, build community in a world that is sort of changing. Something interesting about this novel is there's no villains in this novel. There are characters sort of antagonistic to each other, but they're all trying to do what they feel like they must or what they need to. And they're all complex characters, and it's sort of, the world is gradually getting worse, and no one knows what to do about it. And the question is, okay, well, you can't really we don't know how to solve this on a systemic level, but what can we do on an individual level? And so this book, I feel like, is a really powerful, really interesting book. Like, on its own merits, I don't think you need to know anything about the history of apartheid in South Africa to understand what it is about. Because it is ultimately, I mean, good works of fiction are universal. And this is, I would say, I feel like it's a very universal work of fiction in terms of the themes it's dealing with. It's also, I think one of the reasons I like it is because it's different from a lot of stuff that I have read. As I said, there's no villains. Everyone they're not just the hero in their own story. They are doing the best that they can with their circumstances, given their worldview. And it's not enough to change the world. It's not even enough to make most of them happy, but some of them do figure out sort of how to get through it. And so this is still, I reread it, and this is still my favorite novel of all time. And that is unusual for me because I mostly read science fiction and now fantasy, and I read some mysteries, some literary fiction, but this is just like an amazing novel that I feel like is underrated, and I feel like most of the people in my parents' generation read it, but it seems like I read it as it's basically just an anti-apartheid novel, and this is much more complicated than that, and I feel like it has, if anything, even more meaning, more impact today than when it was written, because now we're 1994, 2026, so yeah, we're almost a quarter century past the end of apartheid, but the themes in this book that these characters are struggling with are still themes that we are struggling with today that have gotten worse, and that's a lot of what I talk about in my Substack, and it's probably going to be a fair bit of what I talk about in this channel too. I'm trying to have this channel be about books in general and not just the stuff I talk about on my Substack, but yeah, I absolutely recommend. Again, this is still my favorite novel, and I still strongly recommend reading this book. I feel like it is, again, universal. It was never about apartheid. It was a condemnation of apartheid, yes, but it is so much more, and I recommend absolutely reading this. Anyways, thank you for your time. Thanks for watching. I am Magpie, and I will see y'all in the next one.